What are emotions?
They are life forces of the soul. Um, they can be, I think. They are a signal that comes from uh, somewhere much deeper than I think we give them credit for often. They require particular kinds of attention and care in order to be brought into our actions and our relationships in a manner that I think really honors what it is to be human and to relate to one another. But they are, in their first instance, something that happens in the body. So they are signals from our body about something to do with the specifics of here and now, this very moment, as well as a very important thread to how that relates to our whole history and potentially our future, right? I do think there is something to that as well. So they are like these very distilled, quite crude in some ways, signals that get elicited in our bodies that can give us very important, wise information about this very moment before us, the potential of how we might act in this moment and what that might unfold and build. But they must first be clearly experienced in the body, and then we must have the skills to be able to know what to do with those signals, how to take care of them, how to bring them into action in more nuanced, complex ways. That's the bit where I think people get stuck. And so instead they can be reduced to just a very crude signal in the body that just wants you to do one thing and often gets in the way of us being able to be more nuanced and complex in our relationality. I don't think they need to get in the way. I think they have something very important to add to the mix, but I think they're often not taken into account on purpose because they're seen as distractions or barriers. We don't know how to handle them. We don't know how to feel them, and we don't know how to handle them. And then we don't know how to bring them in to relationships together.
Yeah. So you were making me think, you used the word signal, and you're making me think about the phrase signal and noise, or signal versus noise. And this is when you're picking up a lot of noise and you're trying to hone in on what is valuable information. So like in this context, you use the word crude to describe emotions. And it seems to me that that might be, like if you see a cave painting from some archaeology dig, and we'll be like, oh, those are crude depictions of such and such animal or this event or whatever. And it's sort of like, it's only crude to you, right? Because you see it as a stick figure. But if you knew how to speak the language, or if you knew how to read the signal better, then perhaps you would actually be gaining much more information. Because if you see, some of the cave paintings would be like of hunting trips. So this could be like a famous, like tribally famous hunting expedition, or maybe just a familially famous incidents. Like, oh, that's that time that Dad got that buffalo. But in either case, they're communicating great depths of information, but without the context, you see it and you say, well, that's an animal and this is a hunter and that's a spear. And so it's very crude in that sense, even though it could be laden with signal. And so I'm wondering about our emotions in that way. How do we learn to speak the language of our emotions?
Yeah, I think that's great, that the signal and noise. A large part of noise that we're contending with these days is anxiety, and I think that just the model that I work in and the way I work, anxiety is not technically an emotion. It is a different kind of signal, and that might be more like this noise we're talking about as well. Anxiety sort of hijacks our ability to have clearer access to our emotional experience in our body, to just feel our feelings of the emotional kind. Instead, most
Can
of
I
us,
interrupt? I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm just wondering if that's because, like, I don't know if you know this, but is it because we are anticipating events, and so we're not genuinely experiencing the emotion in the moment or in the present, but we're
Yeah.
so it's like a faux emotion. Do you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
I mean, I could talk for about 10 hours just about anxiety. So
Okay. Okay.
I say that because, again, this is going to come down to the particulars of different models of therapy and and different metapsychologies. So I think psychology as a whole, as a more broad group, there are particular ways that anxiety is understood and worked with clinically. That is much more what you're talking about, I think. And this has also seeped into just, the common way that anxiety gets talked about every day by everyone. I feel anxious because I'm thinking about an exam I've got tomorrow. Right. And so I'm just getting anxious because I'm anticipating doing the exam. When I'm talking about anxiety in the particular model I use, we see a large portion of anxiety is a signal that is, there's lots of ways it can go, so lots of generalities, but it's a signal that is trying to drown out our awareness of an emotion in this very moment that's trying to come up. So it's actually in response, it's in response to an emotion that is trying to burst into our conscious awareness right now. So, as an example, if you are with your partner and you're having a disagreement or some kind of conflict and you're starting to feel very anxious, it may be that you anger is starting to try and burst into your conscious awareness. There's some anger in response to something in this very specific moment that person is doing, but you learned a long time ago that anger is scary. Right, anger is not useful, especially when you're relating to a man, especially when you're relating to someone who you also love and you want to continue the connection with. Anger is a threat to connection. So rather than feel anger, what we're going to do is we're going to flood your system with anxiety. So you get very uncomfortable, you get very racy. It might lead you to either get out of the situation altogether. That might be physical, getting out of it physically, leaving. It might be that you get out of it in other ways. So you go to what we would call defensive behaviors. So you might become very passive. You might become very agreeable, even though it goes against what you're really believing in that moment. You might start to get weepy and tearful because that becomes a more adaptive response to a man who might therefore actually start to take care of you, or might be more likely to soften his stance and maybe give you something of what you're looking for in that moment. Like all these, there's so many ways it can go. But essentially what I'm trying to get at is, in most of those scenarios, the person is not even aware that they were even starting to feel angry at all. Anger often doesn't even cross their mind. They just notice, oh, I get really scared, I get really anxious. Or, oh, I get really sad and weepy, and it makes me really sad and passive and powerless. Or if they do notice anger, it's more like I notice that I get so activated that I'm not going to stand for this anymore. I'm going to get out of here. They leave the room. They cut the conversation short. They become overly dismissive of the other person who they're relating with. They start to monsterize their partner. Oh, this reminds me of every other time that they have done X, Y, Z. That's not like a pure connection with anger in that moment. That's anger fused with anxiety. So in short, the way that we view anxiety, a large portion of it, is that it is an anxiety about emotion. It's almost a fear of having the awareness that there is some other kind of threatening emotion coming up in this very moment. And we learn that very early in life. So it's very sneaky. That this is often an operation when we are having conflictual emotions at the same time. So that's why I talk about partners a lot, because that's a good example of someone you love, someone you want to remain connected to, someone who you're building a future with. And if there is some other emotion that is starting to come up that you learnt long, long ago, perhaps before you could even speak, that having that come up into my actions is threatening to the other person, and they're going to do all sorts of things to hurt me, punish me, stop talking to me for 3 days, whatever it is, I'm going to lose this connection, then your body and your brain learn lots of sophisticated ways to make sure that you don't even know that that feeling's there. So you couldn't even act on it even if you wanted to. It's an adaptive mechanism at first. But one of the ways that is done is by utilizing these physiological pathways in the body, flooding them with anxiety. Anger is a great one for that, because the pathway, one of the pathways that can get flooded with anxiety is the same one that anger is trying to sort of come up through. Anxiety kind of actually does the opposite. It pushes back down. So it really stamps out the emergence of the signal that's trying to come up, that's just trying to activate your arms, right? Trying to activate you and notice that you are having a feeling of anger. And we can get into the details of that. The anxiety actually is very effective at neutralizing that and making you feel very uncomfortable, often very constricted. So again, it's that like pulling back, feeling very tense in the body. We interpret it as I am scared, often, like I'm scared, I'm fearful. If you really look at it in that example, what you might come to find is that the thing that you're actually most scared of is, what would it be like if I really felt anger here with this person I love? That might actually be the thing that you're scared of, but we just don't know that. We just notice all this anxiety, and then we try to make sense of it afterwards. I'm flooded with anxiety while I'm standing here with my partner, and they have a difference of opinion to me. I must be scared of them. Like, I must not like conflict. It's true, you don't like conflict, but what isn't liked about the conflict is that it brings up these mixed feelings together. It brings up feelings that long ago our body learnt were taboo to have together. Don't have anger and love together. That doesn't go well. That leads to all sorts of bad outcomes for you. Does this make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So
we generally look at anxiety as actually telling us something about the specifics of the particular moment in which it's activated, but you can trace that thread to a whole history about yourself.
So to go back to our analogy of the signal and the noise, if the emotions are the signal and they're sort of being crowded out by this anxiety, how you are a clinical psychologist, so I have an intuition about where you'll go, but how
don't be so
do
sure.
we alleviate the anxiety associated with these emotions in order to participate with the emotion, like to feel the emotion and to expose ourselves to these emotions so we can understand them a little bit better?
Yeah. I should say that I am a clinical psychologist, but the model of therapy I use is a bit more on the fringe, one might say. So it's not a simple answer. It sort of depends on, there are different ways you can map what is happening for a person. So there are different levels of anxiety in the model that I use. There is the kind of anxiety most of us are used to, which is the kind of like tension, like muscle tension. You might sort of like, you feel very uncomfortable and kind of constricted. And then there is also higher levels of anxiety where you start, the anxiety goes into smooth muscles, which means that you might just notice feeling like nauseous in your stomach. You might get like sort of IBS kind of symptoms. This is where you might not even notice it as anxiety. You start to get quite physical complaints. And then there is another level of anxiety that we call cognitive perceptual disruption, which is when our thinking starts to get affected. We can get tunnel vision, we can get ringing in the ears, we can get particular kinds of headaches. The ability for us to actually take in perceptual information is greatly reduced. That's really high anxiety. That's starting to move more towards the sort of dissociative stuff. So first of all, you need to really carefully assess what is happening for a person, what kinds of anxiety they're having, and in response to what kinds of situations. If we take all that as a given, because then I guess in more simple terms, the way that we go about trying to help a person is to try to help them get underneath the anxiety. We try to help them in very particular ways reconnect into their body in new ways and to not take so seriously the signals of anxiety when they're in a tolerable range, right? So to try to almost bypass them. And you do that by really getting clear with the person on what is the cost of this to your life? Like what is the cost of you continuing to live where anxiety is high and all these other defensive behaviors have hijacked your life, have hijacked your ability to be in relationship with others, to show up authentically and act in the world and in relationship with others. And why is it so important that be different for you? Like you really need to hone in on that. We are trying to appeal to what we call the sort of the unconscious therapeutic alliance. We are trying to appeal to the part of a person that is sort of trapped inside underneath all of not just the anxiety, but the other defensive layers that build up on top of that. All the stories essentially that we start to tell ourselves about who we are, how we handle certain relationships, how we handle our emotions, how we get anxiety or don't get anxiety and why that is, what we're capable of or not, what other people are likely to treat us as being capable of or not, all these things. We're trying to get underneath all of that by appealing to the part inside of all of us, the more core aspect of who we all are, I'm going to say. That was there from the start and has just sort of been trapped under all these layers of assumptions and storytelling. And so we do that in very particular ways, and there's a pressure that builds. So we talk about it as sort of like pressure building. You're trying to sort of, the idea being that there is, when you are collaborating with someone on this sort of task, there is the part of them that would like to just keep things as they are. There's a reason these defenses built up. There's a reason we don't look at anger. There's a reason that it's preferable to have anxiety. Don't ever forget that. You know, it's a very insistent part sometimes. And then there is this other more collaborative part, if you will, which is that sort of healthier core self that is aware that they don't want to live like this anymore, that something is being lost of them underneath. And so we are sort of appealing to bringing that conflict into stark relief for a person. And then it's really about applying pressure in a particular way, helping a person to confront those two things in a particular way that helps finally this part to kind of burst forth, have greater power than the attempt of the anxiety and defenses to keep everything clamped down, which essentially just means that in the room, the person is able to now connect and feel pathways of emotion in their body that they couldn't before. They have an experience to varying degrees and to varying levels of sort of needing to be repeated multiple times. They have an experience finally of all this stuff in their body that's been forgotten to them. And if we go back to anger as the example, this might be the first time that a person ever really feels what it's like to just have anger coursing through their body purely without all the anxiety, without all the other defensive stuff. And mostly what people realize when that happens is it's really not that scary. There's no, once you sort of get to that level, there is no fear that it's going to overwhelm your action. You actually feel more empowered about your choice. It's just feeling in your body, and your body feels very alive, and there's a heat to it and all these things. But there's that fear that lots of people have that it's going to overtake you and you're going to lose impulse control in that moment. It drops away because you come to see that that's one of these tricks that anxiety plays on us. It is anxiety that leads us to lose impulse control. It is not an emotion. So when an emotion comes with a big shot of anxiety, then we need to pass those things apart. But once a person starts to just feel more purely these emotional circuitries in their body, it's liberating in that sense. It helps to decouple the need for the anxiety to always be coming online and the other defensive stuff. But the other thing it does in this model of therapy is there are very powerful experiences of this that can actually, we call it unlocking the unconscious. They actually, when done well, it actually brings to the surface. People just spontaneously start to recall certain aspects of their earlier life. It might be particular memories, it might be imagery, it could be all sorts of things, but it just comes to them spontaneously. It's like an apprehension. And what they remember in those moments are very telling about why it was that these defenses built up in the first place. So it actually reveals something about what happened in my life that led me to kind of start to see myself in this particular way and to understand relationships in this particular way. It helps to generate insight into why that even occurred in the first place. And that insight is also useful because it can be the thing that on the one hand leads to sometimes passing of other kinds of feelings. So then there might be a deep grief, a deep pain that goes with the realizations that come with that. But it also helps us to understand that there really is this story that developed about who we are that can fall away now. This is what I mean about, like, it really does lead to a place of opening up greater potential and possibility about who we can be, what we can develop in our relationships. That is very limited and very constricted when we are just walking around operating in our old sort of psychic system, if you will, that got developed so long ago and has just not been updated. And generally it's been reinforced over time because we start to see the world that way. Now, that's a very long response. Did that answer the question?
Yes. Yeah. I want to pick up right there at the end because the narrative reinforcement seems like it could be a large issue for many people. You just think about the type of person that sees it's raining outside and they say, "Oh, great, it's raining," but it was going to rain whether you wanted it to or not. And so your inability to handle that or take it in stride, and you take it as this like sign that the universe is against you or whatever. It's like it seems to be a very particular story. Whereas you could have an alternative perspective where it's like, it's raining. That's what it does. It rains sometimes, like just take it in stride and you don't have to be super happy about it, but just it doesn't have to be stacked against you. So I thought that was interesting because I've been thinking about narrative a lot recently, but I want to go back to maybe the beginning of these narratives in which we are characters. You mentioned how basically you were mentioning attachment theory and you didn't use any of those terms, but like when we're struggling with our partners, we're actually using the same neurological circuitry to relate with them as we develop to relate with our parents initially. And so that's obviously deeply fascinating and
scary.
In many cases, yes, that's scary and problematic and all of these things. And so I'm wondering about, I guess, like the relationship between emotions and relationships, because it doesn't, I guess maybe this touches on emotions and actions, because to me it seems almost strange that something that's internal, that's a signal for me, would enter into my relational calculations, if you see what I'm saying. Like why are we so concerned about these emotions that we're having when it comes to relating with other people? And I just want to say I get that, like, if I'm angry when I'm one and my dad spanks my hand or whatever, or even my mom is cold with me that day or that week because of something that is probably even beyond just me, then I will start to learn to, get what I need from this person. But I guess I'm just fascinated with that aspect of this.
Yeah. Brilliant question. So hard to explain. so hard to explain. And I'm still trying to find words for it, after just so many years. Um, there's a lot to it. So, emotions are mostly relational in nature, and what I mean by that is it's highly unlikely that if you are angry in a moment that it's towards the wall. Like we often talk about, again, if we talk about, so emotions come with an impulse. So emotions, all emotions occur in the body, and they come with a desire for a particular action. And if you pay attention to your body, you can figure out what that is. That's not the same thing. I always want to put the disclaimer. It's not the same thing as saying we're supposed to do that particular action, right? But anger often comes with an impulse. If you really look at it, to hit something. Oftentimes people might be able to get to a point where they say it's for the wall, but really, if you look at it, it's an emotion is about it gets elicited usually in relationship. So it's usually another person is the stimulus, and we have an emotion in response to that, to how they're acting, to us or to others, whatever. And so, usually the impulse is about an action towards a person, if we really look at it. And that can be a threatening thing to look at for various reasons we can get into. But
Sorry, do you think that that's because of the typical proximity to other people, and people have power in our environments? Because I'm watching this show Alone on Netflix. Highly recommend. It's so fascinating.
okay,
And they survive in the wilderness, and it's a competition. Last man standing gets $500,000, and they're alone. But like they'll catch a fish, and then when they're taking it off the hook, they'll drop the fish, and so it's literally survival, a week's worth of food, and they dropped it because they were dumb and forgot to, knock it out before they took it off the hook. And so then you see all of this like internal family system stuff of like their
yeah,
uncle and their dad are just berating
yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah.
And
Where's their father in the shadows?
yes,
Just
yes,
yeah,
you could almost see the family on the sideline there. And
yeah,
but so it's really interesting that you mention emotions in relationship to people. I just am wondering, do you think it's
yeah.
because people are the most prominent or powerful, like significant parts of our environment typically?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I'm just going to reflect on my own personal feelings on it at this point. My sense is that it doesn't mean that emotions can't be, elicited by other stimuli and all these things. But I think in terms of really trying to look at where emotions can be most useful to us, it is in this relational context. Um, I think it's because we need to be connected. There is something we cannot do this alone. And so I actually think there's kind of a directionality to it that is about it's about connection. These are signals that are actually emotions are being elicited in relationship because they are the very thing that is going to give us useful information about how we can come together and work through something. There are so many challenges all the time that all of us face, small scale, big scale, and there will continue to be. And this sort of our ability to be able to meet those challenges as they unfold in greater and greater ways, like whatever that means for you, whatever, like, if we're not just going to remain like flat and just stuck on this one level, right? If we want to unfold new possibilities of what it is that we can do together and what it is we can create and things that we can't even imagine today, but we might be able to do together tomorrow, right? We need to do that together. So I think there is something about emotions that is about the negotiation between autonomy and connectedness.
Yeah,
Right? It is. Does that make sense?
it does. I was just going to say that I think that Alone is obviously a very strange scenario to find yourself in. And so it's not just that the fish is causing emotions in them, but to your point, it is actually, and even what I was saying, it's bringing up these old
You know, it is.
emotional connections. Yeah,
It,
yeah. And so it's like the people
Yeah.
are there is what we said already. And then also there is like a strange reality TV element where the contestant films themselves. So there's no film crew, but like they know this is going on TV. I just did a big dumb thing in front of a lot of people. So
Yeah, they've got their audience in their mind
yeah.
and who it is they're imagining seeing
Yeah, and
them, and
even in
and all
a
these things.
tribal hunting situation, you would be attempting to gather food for your family or for the larger tribe, and in that case, it would be a massive failure, a letdown, a diminishing of your value potential. All of these like serotonergic things that we would be concerned about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. But the um, oh, what did you ask? Oh, so emotion in response to relationship. I see it as um, there are levels of information that we can bring into the equation when we are trying to connect with others. And if we want to take connection seriously and we want to take the possibility of healthy, functioning relationships seriously, then it's my contention that we need to try and look at all the different levels of information available to us, not just bypass emotions as silly circuitry and go into our rational thinking mind. When we do that, we are oftentimes going into defenses against emotion. If you have a very good ability to be logical, to be rational, to sit and talk at length philosophically about ideas and concepts and and you can do that in very elegant ways and you can articulate it well, then that is going to be a prime place for defensive armor to develop. That is going to be a go-to place for your mind and your body to start to use that ability of yours in place of experiencing emotions that are too threatening to feel, you don't know what to do with them. It will start to work defensively as well. You have to be on the lookout. These defenses against emotional experience are sneaky, and they can be the same kinds of behaviors that we also like to engage in for other reasons that are generally useful, but can be hijacked in the pursuit of also keeping feelings at bay. If we are not paying attention to that and we don't interrogate that, then we are missing out on emotions, right? And so there is valuable information to be gained from emotional experience. When it comes to relationship, to me, this is really, it's about intimacy. If someone says, what's the point in developing my ability to feel my emotions more deeply? I mean, I always just say, how intimate do you think you're ever going to be able to be with anyone? And if you have a partner, with your partner, if you decide to cut emotions out of the equation, right? If you just sit and have stimulating intellectual conversation, where you feel very ordered and your body feels very neutral, and maybe you work very hard to never even feel anxious, but you have really good conversations. There's levels of intimacy here, and there is something about deep, attuned, emotional connection at its highest form when it actually doesn't involve speaking at all. When you can sit with someone, it doesn't have to be your partner, it could be a friend, it could be a business colleague, in being able to sit and be with someone and sort of resonate emotional experience together is the highest form of trust and vulnerability in my mind. To not have to be able to do that, to not feel that you need to rush in and cut it short, to not be flooded by anxiety, to not discount the other person's perspective. You might have two very different emotions going on. To remain together in it and to even just hold each other's eye contact in it, that is the deepest form of intimacy and sense of loving care and attunement, even in our difference. And so building up ways to be able to do that when you choose to. I'm not saying we should walk around doing this everywhere. Absolutely not. That would not be advisable. But when you choose to try and do this, you have to be able to know what it is to deeply connect into your emotions. You have to be able to discern the difference between emotions, defenses, and anxiety. And then to be, so there's that bit, there's the inner bit, but then you have to learn to be able to share it with another person, to have the willingness and the courage, the vulnerability. It's a type of being naked, to share that, to sit and be vulnerable, especially if you don't know why you're feeling a way that you're feeling.
Yeah.
So there's something here about, you were just asking about why do emotions matter with
Yeah.
relationships. There's something to do with the depth of relationship that you can get to, and that is what is required, I think, when we are meeting very complex problems as a society in just little units of family. We need to bring all those resources and capabilities online. We can't just be going up here.
Yeah, absolutely.
We miss half. Yeah.
I'm quite taken with that line of thinking right there. So
Mm,
I relish the deeper things. The podcast has the word insight in the name because that's one of my favorite phenomenons. To
yeah.
truly see into something is such a joy. At least for me, I
Yeah.
think other people enjoy it too. And so when you're talking about this, it's something that comes up for me a lot. Like most people in lots of different ways prefer the surface because it's that crude certainty that we feel we have when we ignore what is deeper. There's a pastor named Pete Scazzaro. He taught in New York City, I believe, and he has this whole thing about emotionally healthiness, and it's like 52 different books, and it really extensively got a lot out of this. It was a bestseller originally, and then there's like,
One for every
yeah,
week of
yeah,
the
yeah,
year.
and so but their church logo is an iceberg, and it's
uh,
it's beautiful because the the majority of the iceberg is not on the surface. And so if you're just dealing with people on the
that's right.
surface, then you will see an extremely small amount of them. But I love where you were taking that with the idea that
Mm.
uh, intimacy is valuable to us. And I was just going to ask you how important do you think intimacy is? Because you use the word like the highest and like you. So how important is it, and maybe why?
I think intimacy has this kind of reciprocal thing that goes on. So what I mean by that is when we talk about intimacy, I often it's what I do every day, so this is why my mind goes there, but I often think about the therapy room and the therapy process, but you can apply this to relationship in general. There are certain levels of self-awareness we can get to, through self-reflection and all these things. And then there is something about the container of a relationship that I think is required to be able to have inner intimacy, like to get to your own inner intimacy more deeply. And I experienced that. I was a psychologist and doing therapy before I found this model of therapy I use now, and even still, it wasn't really until I did my own therapy in this model of therapy that I was able to also just deepen my own inner intimacy. And I'm sure I will continue to for the rest of my life. I don't want to infer that this is like a one and done thing. I mean, even right now, I'm in a spot in my life right now where there's plenty of that going on for me. So there is something about the levels of inner intimacy that we can get to that require relationship. And then it's the same thing. The more that we are doing that work, the more responsibility we take to do that individual work, the more we honor our capacity to build better together, right? To generate greater intimacy together. So it's kind of this back and forth. So whenever people are talking about sort of what's going on relationally, there's almost always a parallel to what is going on inside a person as well. So there's intrapsychic and then there's sort of interrelational processes. And I think that intimacy is about not just taking the surface level at face value. Intimacy is about a quest and an adventure and a commitment to going into the unknown together. It's scary because you don't know what you're going to find there often. People like to buttress themselves against all of that by going up here because you're much more able to predict especially if you're entering an argument and you know your position intellectually already, you know you're not going to give up on it, then you can just go in and you can just really hammer someone about, with all these different ways that you're going to convince them onto your side. That's very different to what I would call more of an intimate conversation, which is where you go in open, and you don't know where you're going to be at or how you're going to be feeling by the end of it. You go in knowing that willingly. That's a much more open, vulnerable position. So, so to your point, how important is intimacy? I think intimacy is the courage to put down your armor as best you can, and sometimes we can't do it very well because we have certain things going on in our life, and that's okay. But it's a commitment to do it as best we can together in certain contexts, with the belief that that is our best shot of honoring what on earth it is that we're possible. What on earth it is possible for us to build together, essentially. I keep coming back to that language. I don't know how to put it better. It's creative problem solving, I guess, if you want to put it in boring terms. But it's excavating and exploring and building and things we can't imagine yet. If we go up here, we've already imagined it. Like we've already. So it's playful and it's scary sometimes. But I think it's equalizing too. There's something about it that's equalizing. We're both vulnerable. We're both doing it, or the group is doing it. And we're not there to win. It's not competitive. It's collaborative. So
that is reminding me of John Vervaeke. I loved your interview with him. I thought that was really good, and I thought it was cool how interested he was in all that you were bringing to offer. Not surprising that he was interested, but
I was so nervous for that one. That was one of my first. That was one of my first forays into YouTube. So I look back on that now and I think, oh, I should have said that.
I'm sure. It was a limited time and so much to say. But yeah, he uses the term reciprocal opening in relationship, and I think that that's one of his best tools that he's developed. So I looked up intimacy just to define it, and it says intimacy is this is the Google AI overview, so it's probably totally wrong, but it says intimacy is
highly intimate.
Intimacy is defined as a deep, often multi-dimensional, emotional, physical, or intellectual connection with another person, characterized by trust, vulnerability, and mutual understanding. And so, with that, I emphasize the word connection because I feel like that is extremely important to what we're talking about here, because you were talking about being internally intimate and intimate with yourself. And I think that when it comes to being connected with ourselves, what you're talking about with our ability to feel emotions and sense that signal that they're giving us, and then properly, authentically and properly navigate the world using that information. It seems to me that the image of my son learning how to articulate different body parts, I get to watch that on a very sort of externally obvious biological level, where he doesn't know how to knock. That was something. So he couldn't knock with his knuckles, so he's slapping things. And then just the other day, I was showing him, and he got it in a couple tries, and that was a whole new thing for him. And so then he's knocking on everything. I was just laughing about I'll say give me a kiss, and he just opens his mouth, and that's because he doesn't know that he can articulate his lips. And so there's no pursing of the lips. There's nothing like that. And so it's fascinating to watch that articulation develop step by step as he becomes aware even of this part of himself. And so I was just getting that image as you were talking about internal intimacy through connection with another person. It's almost like, you're touching parts of each other intrapsychically that are you're unaware of those parts of yourself, and you're not even sure that you could adapt yourself to meet the need or even just the presence of this other person in relationship. And so that makes perfect sense to me that the reason that intimacy is so important is because of the connection, but then there's a creative possibility and a creative almost inevitability that takes place in that. So what can we build together? Well, it depends on how much we trust one another, um, and how skilled we are with the articulation of ourselves. And I mean that sort of in the weird soul, intrapsychic way. Um, but then as we develop those things, those skills, we are more trusting, more confident, and able to step into spaces with this in mind. And so this is why I think having a partner is sort of, I don't know what I want to say, the ideal space, vital, yes, for many, right? Because I do always think about people that don't have partners and are capable of living that way. I don't mean to, whatever, make them think
Lots
that
of
it's not okay.
generalities.
But
I've just come to terms with that.
yes,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Um, so anyway, I think that's freaking awesome. I think that it makes a lot of sense to me. One of the things. So I was getting some flack from a TLC friend about the. It wasn't even directed at me. I was talking about another podcast guy and famous one, and I think it was Chris Williamson, and he was like, "Oh, I don't really like respect those guys because they're not Christians." He probably pushed back against this, but that's what I'll say. And I'll leave him unnamed. So he's like, I don't respect those guys. It's hard for me to listen to like what they have to say because I don't really truly respect them. And what I was thinking is that I do respect them because I see them in their own sort of way of articulating the spirit soul thing as aimed at the same goal as me. And maybe I could be wrong, but it just seems to me that they're after the same thing and they're experiencing mostly the same thing. Our narratives are different, religiously, but the the way in which they pursue uh, this self intimacy is fascinating. And I think that Christians might argue, oh, well, Jesus is the answer. I'm somewhat unsatisfied at different times with the way that blocks us from engaging with even just the topic of emotions as something that's impeding our ability to do this thing that Christians would all agree is extremely important, right? Jesus said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Well, there's a really unfortunate yourself at the end of that, right? And so that is so essential. Anyway,
yeah.
that
No, I
that was
love
a whole sort
that.
of
Yeah.
side story to get to the idea that these self-help, very specific and few people, not everyone in self-help is aimed at this, but like the
There's a lot of
expression,
it.
yeah, there's a lot of good because the expression of a person, I think, is so incredible and unbelievable. And if you could imagine like a flower that just never stops blooming, it's like one thing is nice, but then just continually like what it just keeps budding and growing. And so that's like getting to know a person intimately. And that might not be for, every level of that flower might not be for every person, but it is there. And to the extent that it's appropriate, I think that it would be a good thing for people to be able to articulate themselves, learn that there is more of themselves to be articulated. And yeah, I'm really happy that we just got to hear.
Yeah, yeah, me too. There's some, yeah, I'm resonating with a lot of what you're saying there. There is something, again, just my own personal feelings on all of this, not, but there is, um, even like for people that, yeah, they're not Christian, I agree with you. If you are interacting with someone and you get the sense that they're trying to aim for similar kinds of things, like they just use different language and framing for it. They haven't come to a place, and maybe they never will. I'm not saying they need to, but there's just a different way that they understand what they're doing. But ultimately, there is something here again where a lot of that is those thinking faculties after the fact of how we make sense of that, if that makes sense. if they are connected, what am I trying to say? If they are connected to a deeper felt sense inside, that I'm really on the quest of, human collaboration and beauty and truth and like, these sorts of things. And that is how they are aiming their life. And that is how they are participating in conversation and relationship. It really doesn't make a difference to me if they are Christian or not. Because there is a trust I place in my resonance with that inside them. And again, this speaks to the body and the information that we can glean from our body when we're in relationships. This is slightly different to what I would call an emotion. It's more like a felt sense. But I believe it's the same work that you need to do on your emotions to be able to have this sort of trust in the signals that you can experience in your body. So, if and it's happening all the time in the therapy room. It's being honed all the time because I am having to trust and connect into all sorts of feelings and felt senses in my body about what is going on here. Am I interacting with the persona now, or am I interacting with the collaborative part? Is this a very slick defense? What is, I'm not talking about these things out loud necessarily to a client, but it's all about signals in my body that I'm appealing to that give me that information, and learning to discern the ones to take seriously and the ones that are actually trying to lead me astray. Why might they be trying to lead me astray? Have to put that to one side and figure that out later. Can't do it now. Like all of these things. But there's a whole universe of all of that going on inside once we get really tuned into our body and what we feel in there. That gives us all sorts of other rich information that you're not necessarily going to get just by talking to someone and taking their words seriously. We're taking their physiology in. We are taking in our felt sense of their intention here. And then this starts to lead into all sorts of other felt senses like hope and love. And I think that if I'm interacting, we all use different words and framing for it, but people who are essentially on the path of trying to find new ways of being together that take into account love and beauty and the good and the true, and are really open to the idea that there's all sorts of ways we can be led astray from that, even if we think we're really intelligent, our intellect could be leading us astray from that. We do need to always be, there's a humility and a humbling, but just all these things. Once you get a sense, I get a sense of that from a person, I'm happy to talk to them about these sorts of things, but again, that's just me, because I think we're kind of on the hunt for the same sort of thing. That's not to say that there might come points in that relationship where it does become a bit of a impediment, or there are things that we have to confront together about that difference and how we frame it, but I think as a starting point, I think that's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And if we get too caught up in how do they intellectually frame why they are on the hunt for those things, why they feel so compelled with their life choices to be doing that, then we are interacting with a slice of that person. We're interacting with their ability to intellectually frame something, which may be built on all sorts of other torturous life experiences that they have had, which have led them to that place. But ultimately, if they are tuning into something down here that has that same resonance, then I see that as just as important. There was something else I was going to say about what you just said, but it's completely gone.
That's okay. It'll come back.
Good.
Yeah. So I have this definition of trust that I found in a Brene Brown book. She's quoting another doctor, and she says that trust is choosing to risk making something you value vulnerable to another person's actions. And he describes distrust as deciding that what is important to me is not safe with this person in this situation or any situation. And I thought that was really, really useful. But I'm wondering a little bit about trust, because, well, if I'm being honest, in First John in the Bible, there's a passage where he describes perfect love casts out all fear, and so I'm just wondering about playing with those as sort of opposites. That this love that he uses the Greek word agape for, which is like a self-giving love. And so it's almost like just being very trustable, right? And proving yourself trustworthy. And then with that, there's no space for fear, which in my mind is sort of interchangeable with anxiety. You could correct me about that, but anyway, that's sort of my question, because when it comes to this creative, intimate possibility that is relationship, we have lots of relationships, and many people are probably content with just like a normal buddy thing. And I definitely know that like there are people that I trust more safe with, and then there are people that it's good to be buddies, but like that's where we're at.
Yeah. Oh, I love all of that. That's right on how I think about it and experience it. It's really tricky terrain for me to talk about some of this stuff now, because it's going on the internet and people are going to make broad assumptions about what I'm saying, and they're going to think that I'm implying that people should stay in abusive relationships and things, which I am not. So just a giant disclaimer: there are obviously situations where if that people need to get out of, and people really are unsafe. But I do want to say that I think, just as a generality, I think there is far too much emphasis on this idea of being safe, to get, like, being safe to open up about how I feel, as an example, in a relationship. Again, there are places where, yes, there is a difference, and if you're being abused and all these things. But if we put all that to one side, if you are in an adult relationship, by the time you are a grown adult, we're not talking about kids anymore. I think that we have a responsibility to spend some time and do some work on our inner landscape, all this emotional stuff I'm talking about, with an acknowledgement that there's going to be stuff, debris that built up there from when we were younger. We all have it. It was needed then. And actually, I'm going to do my bit now and do something about that to see if I can clear some of it up, in order to then be able to be in relationships in a more kind of creative, whole, potentiated kind of way. And if you do that work, what usually people tend to find is that on the other side of it, so I'll just use myself as an example. I see my role as turning up in a relationship and just doing my bit. And my bit is, if we are really trying to do something together, confront something together, work through something together, I am going to try and be as vulnerable as I can about what's happening for me, even though it might feel very uncomfortable. I'm going to try and stay with it and do that bit. Based on my history of that other person, I might have more or less trust, which is really just a cover word for predictability, I think, that they are going to not be mean to me, not be rejecting of me, not walk out, not, I guess you could say, be abusive, like not do all these other hurtful things, not humiliate me, not lie to me. I'm going to have more of a predictability about this particular person. How likely are they to meet me there and do the same thing? But regardless of that, even if it's the first time I'm doing it with someone, I see trust in that scenario as my own trust, my inner trust that I can do it. I can show up and do that with someone who I don't have a lot of experience doing it with yet, and that no matter what they do, I'm going to be all right. Like, no matter what they do with that, I will know how to handle myself. I will know what to do next. It's not going to destroy me. It's not going to lead to me never opening up to anyone ever again. It's not going to lead to me destroying them. It's not like this whole fear thing, I think, is often about, again, if we really interrogate it, is about the fear of what emotions inside myself will I have to contend with if I turn up with this person, tell them this very personal thing that I've never told anyone, I'm a bit embarrassed about, hoping they're going to take care of it, and then they stomp all over it and humiliate me. What might that elicit inside me? Right, like, and you know, it might be like a rage, as an example, but you know, you learn you should never have that, and that just floods you with anxiety and fear. It can be so great that we actually project that out onto the other person, and we start to see them as scary and threatening, and they might now try and destroy me, and all these things. There's all these ways it can go. But essentially, I have done the work inside myself that I have a trust in myself that I'll be able to hold the emotional response of whatever comes based on how they treat my vulnerability. So I see the trust here as, yes, it's more like a self-trust. Now, obviously, there are times for discernment. You don't just go and do that. You don't choose to just be that vulnerable with someone who has shown you time and time again that they're actually going to physically attack you. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about, but talking about the more general day-to-day kinds of conflicts and confrontations we have with people. So that's a self-trust. The love bit is just the most important bit to me, because the love is the reason that I show up in the first place and choose to do it with that person. And if I can remain connected to my loving feelings for that person, that's the thing that holds me through as well. That holds me, that allows me to remain in touch with the possibility here that this could go well, right? The possibility that there's another human being here who is going to treat this vulnerability and take care of it well and meet me in the same place and offer something back, and we can do something with that over time. And if it goes poorly this time, the trust that we'll come back together and we'll figure it out next time. Like the love, it's more about love. Love is the thing that holds me in the encounter with the other. The trust is all about the trust that I have in myself, that I'll like, and when I say I mean, I have my own way of understanding what that means. I'm also appealing to the fact that I trust that God will hold me, and but even just for someone who doesn't think about it in those terms, just the fact that you'll hold yourself, you'll get through it. So that's how I see it, and love. I just really quickly, but the love bit is so integral to all of this, because one of the things that's really hard for us to do for some reason as human beings is to hold two seemingly conflictual emotions at once in the same moment. So it's very hard to hold on to the fact that this is my friend so-and-so who I love. That's why I came to share this thing with them. And now they're stomping all over it, and I am so angry at them. Right? And so often what we actually learn from, and we learn this very young, we learn to split off one. So we learn to hold on to the anger, and the love falls away. And now my friend so-and-so is a monster who, has no desire to know me as a person. I never want anything to do with again, and you denigrate your kind of memory of them, the potential of your future together. This happens in romantic relationships all the time. Or for some people, they hold on to the love and they drop that signal of anger, and so they become, through doing that, they can become very passive and just very giving to the other. They sort of give up to the other. They forget their autonomy. They forget their piece in the equation. So the holding complex mixed feelings sits at the heart of ISTDP, which is the kind of therapy I do. And so I just wanted to throw that in there too, because I think it's relevant to exactly what we're talking about. But I think you're spot on. If I'm hearing you right, this idea that the kind of safety or the trust in a relationship is often a kind of internal thing as well, and actually there's a kind of love you can tune into, which is the fabric through which you turn up and have those difficult conversations. I think safety. I'll say this then in short. I think safety sometimes now, in this way, is confused with the idea that you should only do these sorts of things if you are almost certain that the person that you tell them to is going to be good about it. So it's actually about predictability. It's about confidence that they're going to treat you well if you share this thing. But I don't know. I don't know that you can ever really know that. You could get someone on a bad day. You could share something with someone who has always been so open and loving towards you. You could share something with them that trips something in their relational history you knew nothing about. They could treat you very poorly in that moment. They could hurt you very deeply. I just don't think we should be looking for that sense of certainty inside before we open up. I think that's a mistake. Obviously, I'm putting abusive relationships to one side here.
Okay, so that is a great response to my question. I'm fascinated by the localization of the trust within ourselves. I also appreciate your reference to God in that case. There's a great Dallas Willard quote that says, the preamble to it is like, he's talking about having faith and what that means. And then he's saying faith means basically to trust that the universe is a perfectly safe place for you to exist. And that is phenomenal, because I don't think that people even consider it that way, but that's what it means if you're going to say, like, well, things are going to be tough, but I know that God's got me, right? That's the underlying principle, is God, who is bigger than the universe, is such that I am perfectly safe to exist here. And so I really I appreciated that reference to him, but then even to recognize maybe even the emotional intelligence or articulation necessary to express these things that are making it difficult to have relationship, difficult to exercise trust. And really, this is something that I associate with faith, because if you think about partners being faithful in a relationship, this is a huge aspect of it. Even intimacy is like a code word for sex in certain communities. It's like, well, okay, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be intimate, and so we need to be a little bit more precise about.
Nope.
Yes,
Those two
yes. And
things can be completely separate. Yeah.
when it comes to trusting, I love that you moved the agency back to the person, ourselves. Like, I can trust you and you can trust me, but it's up to us. And whether or not we're trustworthy, that's something worth discerning and figuring out. But it's almost like Kierkegaard would say, you have to take the leap of faith, right, in order to exercise this. And so, yeah, that's really good. And then, I guess going back to love, I wanted to talk a bit about loving feelings, because I think something that comes up, and we're in a
Mhm.
flow mixture here of Christianity and psychology. So it's like, I think Christians are very hesitant about emotions, because there's such a moral, ethical, component to your actions. And even certain Christians will struggle with verses about, like, don't even do it in your heart, like that's where it is. So don't even have the emotion in the first place, which I
Yes.
can't
Yeah.
imagine is good for what we've been talking about today. But so when it comes to loving feelings, I just want to know, kind of, I don't know if you want to list them or talk about this in general, like, what are those feelings? Because I understand generally what you're talking about, that I have a love or a concern for the well-being of my wife and for my son, and for all the various people that I love. But what does that look like on the emotional plane?
Oh, wow. Okay. Right. What does love look like on the emotional plane? Yeah.
Well, because, okay, so
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
let me hone in a little. So what I'm sensing is emotions and feelings, like, our language is a little sloppy here, because for just based on what we've been talking about, emotions are signals about internal, very deep uh signals. And so then I'm I have like a goal, let's say, in a loving relationship, to protect, to provide, to um build up, to be intimate, to know, to see. And the feelings that I have can very easily contribute to that or withhold from that. You see what I'm saying? So, like, if I am feeling fearful about how I navigate something, or uncertain, then it could lead me to sort of suppress what is originally a
No, I get
loving
it. I get it
feeling.
now.
You see?
Yeah. Okay. So there's sort of two components to talk about there. So the first is a bit boring, but I think it's important to specify. When I'm talking about emotions, I'm talking about the feeling in the body, the sort of physiological feeling, if you will, in the body. And the core emotions tend to have their sort of signature way that they are felt in the body. But if you pay attention to them enough, and they intensify enough, and you get rid of the other this noise that's trying to interfere, so you get rid of anxiety or other like repressive forces, then you come to see, as you pay attention to them, that they all have a specific action impulse. So they all want that, they are designed to have you want to do something with your body, if you will, or with your actions. If we think about, and I think often what's the reason I bring that up is I think often what can be confusing is this idea where we start to say we shouldn't have certain feelings, and having certain feelings are going to lead you astray and all this stuff. I think people are talking about if you take the impulses of those feelings seriously in every encounter that you have them, they might lead you astray, yes. But it's counterintuitive, but we are actually in a better position to choose how we act in the world if we have clearer oversight, if you will, to exactly what is bubbling away inside me right now and what does it want my body to do. If I can see that more clearly, then I can choose better. I can think about the options better than if there's all these processes trying to hide that from me and I'm all confused in this murky mess upstairs, you know. So there's that piece. And I don't know that you can do anything about getting rid of just the elicitation of an emotion and the associated action impulse. I don't know that you necessarily want to get rid of those things. Usually if someone is feeling a moment's rage, if they can get in touch with it, it's usually just trying to give you a signal about something that this person's doing right now that maybe you hadn't considered you don't like for some important reason, and you could think on that for a while and you could figure out that actually that's because going down that path would lead me astray. And anyway, let's not get into that. Okay, so the second part is the loving feelings. So what I generally find, again, generalities, is that once people are often really defended against loving feelings. So we talk a lot, obviously, in therapy about, oh, you're defended against feeling your anger, and you're defended against grief, and you're defended against emotional pain, and guilt. But people can be really highly defended against feeling love too intensely. And you can think about why that might be from early attachment relationships. But once people are able to feel love more clearly, what you generally find is in those scenarios where, say, for example, you're with someone who you love and you're having an argument and it's eliciting a lot of anger inside you as well, or maybe guilt, right? You can feel them both, and generally the love wins. I don't know how else to put it. Like generally love kind of, love either wins in that you can no longer deny that it's also there. So you don't go to the move of, I only see the anger or I only see my guilt, and that makes me either kind of shameful and pull away from you, or like just really monsterize you and not want to be around you right now and speak to you in a really punitive way. The love is like has a tempering quality to it. So long as you can feel it at the same time, it is actually the thing that is, its impulse, I guess, if you will, is something to do with connection and forging intimacy and going beyond where you are in this moment together. It is kind of the feeling that leads to the impulse of, I want to figure it out with you. And I don't want to figure it out in a way that means I win or you win. I want to figure it out in a new way that we don't know. I want to find the new way, essentially, with you to figure this out, because I want to honor you and me, but I want to honor relationship and what we can't do individually. Like, to me, that is the impulse of love. People often talk about it as like a reaching out and holding, but it's that figuratively too. It's like I want to bring us together to create the thing. I guess it's like making a baby, like to create the thing that we can't do alone. And wow, it's got a life of its own now. It's this like incredible, it's such a miracle. And I think,
is this like the scene in every movie where you're very passionately arguing with your partner and then you start like making out because...
And you make a baby?
Like, I know that's... Yeah, exactly. Precisely, yes.
Well, like, sure, like we could, yeah, sure. I mean, I think maybe symbolically that's kind of like showing that. I think part of that too is like the, it's like the funneling of the aggressive impulse too that is coming from
right, yeah,
into this like passion. It can be that, and it can just be the holding on to, as I look into my partner's eyes, the holding on to their humanness. And everything I know about them and how they have been with me in the past and how they have loved and taken care of me, I don't forget that in the mix. I'm still interacting with someone who's making me incredibly angry right now, right? really don't
Hmm.
like the way they're talking to me. I really am getting frustrated that they can't, put down this particular position they want to remain attached to. But I don't have to. I still feel my love for them, and that impulse is the thing that holds me in my remembering of who they are as a fuller human being, with both retrospectively, but also in terms of, again, possibility and future, and how what is like just this infinite kind of thing inside
Yeah.
all of us, you see.
And
So
you're remembering, you said remembering, but I want to say like there's a more active participation or something, because even just that word remembering is sort of like reconstructing, or, like
yeah,
maybe
yeah, yeah,
something broke apart your image of the other person in that emotional moment, but then you're putting back together. I would want to say like the lenses that you're able to see them through, right? Because even just to stick with the making a baby analogy, like that's true participation with one another, and in the sense that uh you're not just perceiving them a certain way, you're interacting with them.
it's
And
active.
so
Yes, yes,
yes,
yes,
yeah.
yes, I agree. And that's the yeah, and that is, yeah, that's kind of that's what I mean about love. Love does have an impulse to it like that. Like, we can talk about love as just a thing of sitting passively and remembering someone we love and feeling the feeling inside. But yeah, like in this context, it is how are we going to sort of wrangle with this problem, if you will,
Yeah,
in a way that takes care of one another and what it is that we know we are capable of doing together.
I really love that. And I'm just making stuff up here, but I feel like fear
Okay.
and love might be sort of like at the deepest level, like meta emotions, narratival emotions, something like this, where it's like it's
Yeah.
so important that we understand which one is driving, because there's
Yeah.
almost like you were saying that anxiety crowds out the signal, but maybe it just makes it difficult to interpret the signals. You see what I'm saying? So
It
like
does. Yeah.
when you're operating on a love frequency, not to get too woo here, but like then you're able to sublimate these emotions
Yeah.
properly, right? Because then in anger, the Bible says, "Be angry, but do not sin." And the greatest principle of all the principles in the Bible is to be loving. And so it's like uh,
Mm.
to not sin would be to be angry in love, right?
Yes.
And love is, uh, yeah,
Yes. It always
it's
wins.
above,
It is. Yeah.
right? Always wins. That's in First Corinthians.
Is it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm.
Love never fails,
Of
and
course. Yes. No, I did know that.
yeah, and so okay, so there was
Yeah. I
so
think that's
so much good
beautiful.
stuff.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, I've heard, I
We
want to
can
say
fear
Mother
how much we
Teresa.
can love. That's kind of the other bit I just want to put on it. A lot of this is, when we talk about fear and anxiety, again, to go back to what I was saying earlier, a lot of this is about fear and anxiety of exactly what is going on inside us, what it is we are capable of feeling, and if we really let ourselves feel it, what it might push us towards doing. And we often
Mm,
associate that with things like, oh, but I don't want to reach out and hurt someone. But if you get rid of those ones, we're talking about like love as well. Essentially, you have to unblock all of it to be able to have the access to the impulse that comes with truly loving someone, because that is the impulse that's like, wow, I had no idea what we could be capable of doing together. Yeah.
First John chapter 4 is the chapter that talks about love and God and all of this amazing stuff. Like God is love. But
Was it
uh,
First John? Okay.
yeah, First John chapter 4,
Okay.
and there really is so much good stuff in there. And I I was just thinking about some saint. I believe it was Mother Teresa.
Hmm.
She was asked about her practice of prayer and what it was like, and how those interactions with God were. And she said something to the effect of she just sits there uh, with loving me. And um,
Yeah, that was
I
Mother Teresa. Yeah.
and I wonder about the dependence of being beloved, because uh, I don't know if you're
Mm.
familiar with Brennan Manning by any chance, but he was a priest for a while, and then became sort of a spiritual director and author, and he's really
Okay.
been impactful in my life. And he talks about this stuff so well. He was also an alcoholic and had this deep shame and wounding all of his life, and it was better and worse at different times, and an immense ego to go along with it, which can only intensify the shame of it all. And yet he so deeply through this was able to articulate the love that God had for him, because he was intimately dependent upon it. And that was the thing that was rising up for me, is that in a relationship we desire to be loved, but then what it requires is dependence, in the sense that we were talking about with the trusting and being safe and all of this. And so I just wanted to bring that up and, I don't know, kick it over to you, see if you can play with that.
Yeah, and you mean dependence, right, in the sense of if we start to get a taste of a loving relationship, we sort of become dependent on the other. Like there's the fear of what happens if this goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just to add something in, I think that I'm wondering about if there is a inherent dependence in the beloved, because the other is offering themselves to you in this agapic sort of sense, right? And so because they are offering themselves, you can always offer yourself, but that's different than being loved by them. You see what I'm... So you're receiving the other and their beneficialness to you.
Yes, and but it's you're right, and it's both, right? So what I mean is for this to kind of work in the way that I've been talking about it, I guess it's both parts. I think what you're getting at is our ability to be open to being the beloved, to receiving the love of the other. That's its own kind of that comes with its own kind of history and potential debris and work. And then there is also our capacity to offer back, to be able to do the loving back. Is that essentially what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's this is why I think, though, this is why the relationship's so key, because this is the bit that requires the people in the dance. I just want to go briefly to what you were saying there about when you were reflecting on Mother Teresa and how she would pray. I think it was. There's something about that I've been thinking about quite a bit recently as well. That this like if we go back to these kind of levels, like I'm going to call it the inner space, but what I mean by that is just not in relationship with another human being necessarily, right? But what we're doing, which. I don't know if this is related to what you were just saying or not, but I sometimes reflect on where is it almost that I am drawing from in the kind of the loving that I am able to offer out. Because I think about, this is in lots of places. I'm not trying to imply this is just therapists, right? But, I often think about sometimes, certain forms of therapy, there is a lot of loving outwardly that I'm doing, if you call it that, and I'm genuinely feeling, and I do sort of, I guess I've been relating that more and more recently to this relationship with God, and this like it really is almost like it just works, it comes through me, if that makes sense. Like it's not what am I trying to say? There is something though about that there is an importance to also have sort of quiet spaces of whether you call it personal reflection, also prayer, like all these things that are so important to all of this. And I find that when those things are not operating well in my life, I'm much less capable of being able to do this well. And I think about when I was really young, this sounds weird, but I spent a large portion of my childhood underwater. Like I really did. Like we had a pool, and the pet name in my family for me was the Greek word for fish. Like but I was always underwater. I was always in there just under, and there was something about it that it's like, that there's like a quietness and I guess it's womb-like or something. But there was something, I don't know, I've been thinking about that a lot more recently. There's some link to that for me around this idea of like, what on earth am I trying to say? Somehow linked to prayer, or somehow linked to kind of having the quietness, the feeling of kind of there's something about my ability to reflect in that space or to connect into something beyond me. I don't know. There's something in all of that mess that I just said that seems really important to this process of being able to deepen our ability to love.
Mm.
Um, However you want to think about that, whether you're Christian or you're not. And I think that's where the language changes, obviously, when we talk about it. I guess I bring all of that in because there is something here too about, I don't want to imply that what I'm saying is we should always just be like relating all the time with one another in these intense confrontational ways and lots of emotional intimacy. And there is this kind of breathing, this kind of going in and out. That's like a need to sort of almost consult oneself as well. I sort of like go back to here and then offer out and then meet each other and then kind of be more individual. It's just like autonomy, connection. That's why I say dancing all the time. You know,
Yeah.
it's yeah, and this is why relationships are so tricky and nuanced, because you're trying to be across that for yourself. Your partner is trying to be across that for themselves. Sometimes those two things don't match in the very moment. You know, you're like, I really want connection. Well, I just really need to breathe over here. Over here. There's a lot of this, and that's only two people. Then you have families, you have kids. Then you have just, you know, broader community spaces where there's, you know, 40 people trying to relate together. So yeah, that I'm aware that doesn't really answer your question, but there is something in there that is related to what you're trying to say, I think.
Before we started, I told you that I hope this would be playful. So I think that in the spirit of that, this is continuing on that path. So a
Good.
couple things came up for me, and one in particular I'll start with. A couple years ago, I did a study on the Hebrew book Deuteronomy. And there's this wonderful, the Hebrew literary style is just so amazing. They did this thing where seeing and hearing are opposed to one another. And so one of the things that you've been talking about is this emotional dissonance that people are unsettled by, and they tend to resolve it in one or the other, such that there could be some form of certainty, even though they might still be feeling both emotions. They ignore the other to the point of being insensitive to it. They can't perceive it. And so this emotional dissonance is something that when you move to the sense of hearing, you can have resonance, dissonance, harmony, all of these things where multiple frequencies are entering your ears, and your sense of hearing is much more able to deal with that. Vision is hyper specific. And so we think we could see all this stuff. Like I have peripheral vision, I'm aware of the things in the room around me, but in reality, it's the fovea of my vision that I'm able to perceive with my sense of sight, my eyes. And so the fovea is like a few centimeters. There's really not that much that's within focus of my view. And so when I'm looking at something, I feel like I'm perceiving it, but it's actually relatively limited in its capacity to you know, be a deep sense. And so I just was thinking about that because it's really cool that it's in the Bible, and God is longing to be heard by his people, and maybe even unable to be seen by them, right? In certain ways. Uh and so this is a really interesting, like, ancient reference to this, that there is a broadening of our senses, but also a deepening of our senses through hearing. And even if you think about, this is a little symbolic, but like when we talk to one another, we'll use the phrase like, "Oh, I feel so seen by you right now." And there's this weird thing where we're very vision. We have vision at the forefront of our mind, right? It's a
We
primary.
feel grounded.
Yes,
Yeah.
but the reality is, we're communicating in one of the most miraculous and mysterious ways possible, because our fleshy lip flaps are able to communicate this with the breath out of our lungs, and it's like it's
Yeah.
astounding. But that's inherently internal. Even if I'm using my intellect to participate within this, it's like it is something inside of me that I'm trying to lay out for you so that you can connect with what's going on inside of me. And so there's a deeply reciprocal, opening, intimate type of thing that's happening, but it you don't see what I'm saying, right? You hear what I'm saying. And so I just wanted to go towards that, because I think in ISTDP, your form of therapy, you're able to incorporate the sense of vision into this, and perceive the person both on the surface and through their language, their ability to describe whatever's going on. And you put these things together, and that's of course awesome. But in reality, like, you're attempting to use those senses so that you get to the place where they're able to like open up about these
Yeah.
other things, and those things are deep within. So anyway, I just was
Yes.
seeing all of that, and maybe hearing some of it.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I love that so much. There's also touch, like a lot of this. There's something here around also, emotional, like an emotional experience happens in the body, and so it's almost like an internal touching that goes on for a person. Like that's what I mean. Like when you start to feel your body in you, and you understand what it's like to really feel a feeling in your body for the first time, when all you've really ever felt is anxiety. It's you start to experience your body in you, and then you start to sort of there's all this resonance that goes on. When I'm sitting with someone in the therapy room, my body is giving me all sorts of information. It's felt. It's in the body as well, and our physiology is communicating to one another. Our unconsciouses are communicating to one another. There is this really mysterious thing about speaking. You're right, like it comes up through the body, and the fact that our lungs are involved, and like all just sort of the mechanics of our throat and our mouth, which are also systems that can be very easily hijacked by anxiety, by anger, by all sorts of feelings. They have an influence on how that comes out, and the tone, and the ability to catch your breath, and it's a remarkable thing. And if you can just slow everything down with a person and start to really pay deeper attention to all of those things, there's a form of intimacy that develops just in that. It's a form of deep attunement with another person, and you're helping them to attune to themselves. They are attuning, they're learning anew what it can be to actually sit and explore something with a person. But yeah, I mean, vision is crude. You want to talk
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
Yeah. I started my years ago. I started my research career in children's eyewitness testimony. So I know all about the failures of eyewitness testimony, and how hijacked our visual system is by all sorts of other things. And it's in my mind, there's something about just the multisensory that is so key, and how it is that how we feel and experience our inner landscape, and that is like a form of touch. How it is to feel the presence of another person, even if they're not actually reaching out and touching you, you feel touched.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is a psychic touch, and eye contact. I think eye contact is really key for all of that as well. So yeah, there's something about just looking into, like trying to like look into one another, without the need to kind of just share a whole lot of words yet. So yeah, I just love the way that that you think about these things too, like kind of bringing all these playful pieces together.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I was gonna read another quote. I don't know how
Yeah,
well
sure.
I transcribed it, so bear with me. But it's from it's from a passage in Leisure: The Basis of Culture by Joseph Piper. And he I'll just include this. It's a little bit of a non sequitur, but it fits with what we've been talking about. He says, Heraclitus said, listening in to the being of things. And he's going to talk
Sure.
about two different ways of thinking about things. But I think that's what I was getting at with the sense of hearing. It's even like I might use that to describe what it's like to hear God, right? Listening into the being of things.
Yes.
So he goes on to say,
that reminds me of the Strike of Beauty. Anyway,
oh, yes. Mutual friend Daniel Garner.
Yeah,
yes.
That's right. We have to bring him in. Yeah.
We'd be remiss. Okay, so Piper says, the medievals distinguished between the intellect as ratio, or rationality, and the intellect as intellectus. Ratio is the power of discursive thought, or searching and researching, abstracting, refining, and concluding. Certainty, that's a parenthetical for me. Certainty. And he just quotes this Latin discursiere, to run to and fro, whereas intellectus refers to the ability of simply looking, simplex intuitus, to which the truth presents itself as a landscape presents itself to the eye. The spiritual knowing power of the human mind, as the ancients understood it, is really two things in one, ratio and intellectus. All knowing involves both. And I think that's really important when it comes to like relationships and people, because there's a bit of that multi-sensory aspect of what we were just saying, that because I am heavily intellectual, and as you're talking earlier in the podcast, I'm like, I'm gonna have to re-listen to this one. I need to incorporate. We might need to schedule a session, but
I'm heavily intellectual too, so don't worry. I'm there with you.
And so I just know my growth edge there, and maybe like the pitfalls that these are the ways I'm going to defend myself. And yet with that, it's like, okay, at the same time, I know it's almost like the love wins thing that you were saying, that there is such a desire in me to be able to know another and be able to be known by another. And so I see the need to move beyond the ratio that he's describing there, where it's like, this can't simply be a collection of data to build a certainty from. It actually needs to be the unfolding of what is, right? And go for it. I was hoping you had something to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, oh no, I love that distinction. There's something about the intellectus. There's something about like getting out of our own way sometimes, just getting out of our own way, and just the belief that there is something there. This is apprehension, really, the belief that there is something there to apprehend if we are able to kind of get out of, there's a time and a place for this kind of other kind of rationality, and then there's the kind of, and now we get out of the way and some, and see, allow something to be apprehended from it. I was just going to say, when people talk about pursuing certainty and all these things, and I know it's going to differ wildly based on people's circumstances, but just in a general sense, I just often wonder, what is the point then? Like what, I don't know, like if we have sort of got this outcome that we have calculated and we are just trying to like map towards, I don't know, to me the whole point of this whole thing is that we are all deeply vulnerable together in our not knowing, and that we, some of us are more adventurous in that than others for various reasons. And we can all kind of try to work together with that to see what it is that is going to unfold. There is a mystery and an adventure and a calling to all of that I don't want to over romanticize. I know comes with a whole lot of stuff, and a whole lot of challenges. And there are moments to pause and all these things, but. This is where I do see sometimes emotions can be a little calling from inside, trying to remind you of that. Sometimes when you're getting too stuck in this flattening need for sort of more rigidity and certainty in this moment, and there are moments for that. I'll never forget the times of my sleep deprivation with my babies, where I was just right on my edge, and I just needed some certainty. I would listen to John Viveki then, because it was just like the nice sort of like, and so there are times, sure, but like in a, you have your times of that, and then there is this sort of opening up to what are these little signals inside trying to tell me if I could take them more seriously, if I could contend with them in these other ways rather than trying to flatten them and make them go away. Some of these signals can be very inconvenient. It can be very inconvenient at times to realize that you are deeply unhappy about something, or that there's actually a problem here. And I've been trying to ignore that for a long time, but it's still trying to get my attention. And we could either contend with that, with the possibility of what that could afford here, or we could continue to pretend it doesn't exist. So there is a lot here about, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a lot here that relates to denial in my mind, and denial and this kind of need for certainty. There is very little, if anything, that is certain or given to us in that way. And I think about relationships like that, and I think about what we were just talking about in terms of finding safe relationships. I think it's been used, that phrase now, to the point of being interchangeable with find someone that you can be certain will always take care of your feelings, and when they don't, get rid of them quick because they're not safe now.
Yeah.
And that's just that. Yeah. So this is more about that kind of, like Daniel Garner talks about, the more of the geometry of being, the kind of higher dimensionality and this unfolding, and words like Hegel's sublation and like all these concepts. That's sort of what I'm referring to when I refer to what can happen if we also take emotions seriously, and do it in particular ways. When we find that we're too up here, it's usually a sign that there is something threatening going on underneath that we are trying very hard to not pay attention to.
Yeah.
There are times to do that, and then there are times to try and open that up and take it seriously.
Are you familiar at all with Dr. Alan Shore?
Yeah, yes, I am. Sensory motor psychology. Maybe not. Anyway,
well, you might be more familiar with him than I am. He did an episode of Huberman podcast, and he was talking about left brain, right brain, and the different things that are localized to, more particularly the right brain. Lots of these things lateralize across both hemispheres, but he was talking about how love and art and empathy and all of these things are localized in the right hemisphere, and this connects obviously to the godfather of lateralization, Ian McGilchrist, and he's often referenced by people like me who haven't read both of his books, but I've read one of them. And so this concept is so sticky because it's like he describes the way that the culture is left-brained, right? And that means to him that we're focused on maybe this ratio in certain ways, like the minutia, the obvious directive, the details, and the right brain is better with the gestalt, and but then this contributes to the emotional aspects of this, because emotions are almost like gestalts, right? Like they're a missing piece if we're not in tune with them. And so, like, what's wrong with this picture? Well, you don't know because you've never seen it, including this feeling that you've been sort of pushing off. And so when you're receiving these signals that are, for whatever reason, unwanted, the ability to, transcend the fear and be able to sense them, I think it makes perfect sense that we would then have a greater picture of the whole, like the whole of what's going on. And I guess it's fascinating to me that that's so essential for a relationship, because we've basically, this is talking broadly, the culture has shifted such that productivity is so important. And then you get to the point where it's like, well, my emotions are getting in the way of my productivity, like I'm not able to focus on the details, so I need to be more emotionally attuned. It's like, well, yes, sure, but also the emotions are a part of what's going on, but like there is a whole thing that's going on, not just the details. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. One of the questions I had, and I don't know if we have enough time to get into it, but it's like, why do we need so much therapy? Like, why is it that everyone should go to therapy, it seems like, and uh, I know that can sound like an overfitting to people, but it's more like I sense that this is actually a really deep struggle for so many of us. And some people maybe are better at coping with it than others. But other than that, it seems like pretty much par for the course.
Yeah, it's a tricky question, that one. Yeah. So this is obviously what I do, and so my response is going to be in the context of someone who is paying attention to therapy all the time. I am sure that there are other ways that people manage in their life to be able to free up and clear out some of this inner debris and generate clearer emotional access and all these things. There are ways that people happen to find experiences or relationships or other contexts where maybe they're able to do that. I'm not trying to imply that only certain kinds of therapies can do that for you. However, I do think about this a lot. I do genuinely wonder what are those other places where people are, because there are some particularities to the kind of school of therapy that I use that are very particular and unique to that method, that seem to be that seem to just be life-changing. I know that's a big claim, but seem to get under the kinds of crust that even all these other schools of therapy fail to do. And so I don't necessarily know about everyone needs to go to therapy. I think I say this with love and care and understanding, but I think there are lots of types of therapy that are not particularly helpful, to be honest, or don't really operate very effectively for people. I think there's lots of kinds of therapy that people can go to for far too long, where it just becomes sort of a chat, or people are operating just on one level, and that's useful for a while, and then that's all that therapy is. So you just stay there, and that's you don't go deeper. I think there is a range of willingness or wanting to even go deeper that varies, which is totally fine. I think some people are not interested in that. They're kind of just and they're happy with what that allows them to to do in the world and to do in relationship with others, and that's okay too. But there is this kind of particular form of experiential dynamic therapy that I think allows someone to more effectively get under the hood of all the stuff that has been built up, all the templates, or the distortion to their emotional and inner landscape, that allows them to see anew, that unlocks what I would call our sort of unconscious potential, that is unlike other types of therapy. I mean, I could get into all sorts of various reasons why I think that is, but it's probably a bit long-winded. I think it's particularly useful, this type of therapy, if you are someone who really wants to be, like you have a yearning to do that. Like you notice that there are these enclosures that you just find yourself in sort of over and over again. I'm doing everything. I'm reading all the self-help books. I'm trying to talk through my anxiety. I'm trying to do what this podcast told me. I'm trying to do that. I'm really showing up and trying to do it. I might have even been to some psychologists and tried some forms of therapy. I've learned some breathing techniques. I'm doing all this stuff. I meditate. But you're just aware that there is something about how this anxiety shows up in my life that just feels like a constricting, paralyzing force that's limiting me. And I do not know what to do now. I don't know how to get rid of that any more than I've tried. Or if you just find yourself, another one is not necessarily anxiety, but you find yourself in patterns of relationship that it's just like, this is just happening all the time. This is like this ongoing pattern, and I'm open to the idea that there might be something else going on inside me that's driving all of this, but I just don't know how to get to it. Knowledge is one thing. You might even read Freud and Jung, and like you might have theoretical knowledge, and this happens with therapists all the time. They're like, oh yeah, I understand the meta-psychology of all this, but you need to have the experience of it. Like the understanding, the theory is not going to help you get underneath and experience. You need the experience to be able to break open the other processes that have taken hold, essentially. That is the thing that displaces them finally, and sort of teaches your psyche that they don't need to be around anymore. But that's all experiential. So there is something here about the experiential. It's not, you can't just read this in a book. You can't read it and then know it that's not going to be the thing. You have to have an experience of it, and my contention is you have to have an experience of it in a relationship. And there is something about a therapeutic relationship that is quite particular that I think really can allow for that. It's more of a playground. There is a context there where there's a kind of vulnerability that for some people might be an easier entry point. For other people, it's more terrifying because like, I don't know anything about you. I don't like this. But whatever way that goes, it is a particular kind of playground, if we call it that, in context that I think helps to facilitate that. But you can do it. You could do it in other forms of relationship. It doesn't have to be therapy per se. I just don't know where they would be or what they would be.
Yeah, I had another psychologist on, and I asked him what is the role of a psychologist and like in society, and basically it was a long way of saying they're like a friend, and that's sort of what we laughed about after his answer. I was like, sounds like you're talking about a friend, and it's funny because it's not only that. There's a lot of training and work that goes into developing the capacity to do this at a professional level. But at the same time, like I know of a researcher who was, she was doing this like hire a friend thing, and you just pay somebody for the hour, and they come and have coffee with you, and they're interested in you and whatever. But they're sort of like a sex worker. Like they're not really interested in you. They're interested in the $75 that you just paid them to sit there and drink a coffee.
Making sure it looks like they're really interested in you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so it's I think it's related to that. Yeah. And another thing that we were talking about that I was thinking about with you is third spaces. And so I actually don't know what the first two are, but I'm assuming home and work, and then maybe home and school for like kids. But then a third space would be like different, and it seems like that would invite play, right? Because school, in at least American culture, and I don't know how about you in Australia, but like the school work, right? That's the whole thing. And then home has a lot of pressure, right? There's a lot of weight on these they're the most intimate relationships fundamentally, and all of the baggage and all of that stuff. So a third space does seem like could probably set your backpack down from your school day, and you can sort of like explore and develop, almost like developmental spaces, right? And so this used to be like bridge parties or something, like playing cards, knitting club, book club, all these like in-person social things, the elk club, just lots of clubs. But these things have been sort of removed. Even you and I, like with Voicecraft or the TLC, we have participated in these online communities where it's like some aspects of that. I think there's a massive difference between being able to be in person and like, let's go for a walk. That changes the dynamic substantially. Or even just like, I don't know. I don't like to say super deep things into a computer because I don't know where that's going, and I know that it's going somewhere. So, like just being aware of that is a limiting factor on how intimate this third space could be. And yeah, like that's just something that I think about a lot, even just how to create it. I've been thinking, I don't know if I should say this out loud, maybe somebody's going to steal it, but thinking about
Just
making
notice the feelings about that.
yeah. I had this idea about a company that it's literally just a space, and you make it comfortable, and it's not really like a cafe or anything. I was thinking of calling it Meet Space, because that's like the internet alternative. But it's a place for meeting, and not business meetings, but just like hanging out. And really not sure how viable that is as a business, but it just was like I think that's what we need, right? We need places to do that sort of thing.
And there's it's so open in that regard. Yeah, no, I agree. I think about this a lot too, and I am so and have been so focused on kind of the individual psyche and just the like little one-on-one relationship. that I don't know. I don't know how much I've come up with that's useful there yet, but I think about it all the time. I think with children, it's clearer for me. So, my son does jujitsu,
Mm.
and I see, I just see how that does operate like a third space. Like there is a, because that's a place he can really start to contend with his body too, right? And all the
Hmm.
kind of like, and that is the building up our ability to be with emotional circuitry, anxiety, fear, contending with the power in our body, matching it to the other, and how that's always changing. There is a playfulness to it, but there's also still,
Yeah, you
there's still
play
rules.
jujitsu, right?
You do, you play, yeah, 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 and it's. I just see how much he has changed in so many ways that I really put down to jujitsu. Um, but it doesn't have to be jujitsu. There's all forms of that. I think with children, something, especially in today's world, something that really encourages playfulness with their body, like gym, like just like essentially getting into the gym of some kind, um, and and learning the limits of that and how it feels when their arm is moved in a particular way and all these things, and what emotional circuitry is activated in them as someone's coming at them and all this stuff. What it's like to win, what it's like to submit, all these things. Um, so that, for children, there's that. There's obviously also like creative arts and things for kids as well. Improvisational spaces, like I think, and I know I've spoken with Daniel about this too. Like, when it comes to music, more like of an improv style and a playfulness, as opposed to just like very rigid technique, and scaling you and like on your progress and going through different levels of achievement.
Hmm.
All of that. I think with yeah, adults it's harder. I like your idea because it's very simple. You know what I mean by that? It's there's not too many constraints around it. It's like this is a place you come together and you meet. Do what you will. Like kind of
Yeah.
yeah, and that can be scary, that kind of open space for people when we're so used to being told.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the blank page problem. You're trying to write
yeah, yeah,
something
yeah.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, but people will come face to face with their anxiety in that. That's fantastic. Like that's the.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
it's
there's
an
also something about nature. Nature is really important in all
mm,
of this. Like
mm.
getting out together um, as groups of people and actually contending and being with nature. There's also a pace change to that. I think that's important. A lot of what we're talking about here is a real slowing down from the usual ways of relating with one another in all sorts of conversations, rather than like mining each other for information or doing that surface level thing where I've asked about how work's going, I've asked about how your wife is, I've asked about how the kids are. Good. I was a good friend, and you asked me some, and good. We caught up. We know where we're all at. Good. We're done.
Hmm.
That's not a sharing really of any kind of deep emotional experience. So we need places where we can be free to play with and slow down in our ability to have more emotion with a person, and then to be able to do that for the other person, to just be with our friends and just really facilitate their emotional experiencing in that moment without needing to do anything for them. Just be there, just your presence. So,
Yeah.
um,
One of the things that's bringing to mind is the connection between play and exploration. Like play is deeply connected to this, expansion of yourself, just like what we've been talking about the whole time, that you would become interiorly articulate. It's also associated with the jujitsu to become physically articulate, emotionally articulate. And uh, I think I do see lots of people returning to, like, even jujitsu is a perfect example because Joe Rogan is into jujitsu, everyone is into it, right? And so
yeah,
thank God for that, because it is something that everyone can do. Because uh, like, I don't know, I play in a softball league in the summer, and that's really fun. But there is definitely, it's very competitive. It's a little bit different. I mean, it's not that jujitsu isn't competitive, but it's a little different.
there's a one-on-one with jujitsu. That's like a one-on-one wrangling and play. It's like dancing,
Yes, yes,
as opposed to yeah, like team
right.
sports. It's a bit different again.
So the thing that I'm aiming at here is with adults. This is something Daniel talks about too. That if you can't make money from it, then you should not be wasting your time with it. And um, I think that you see so many things fall away because of this. Not just music, jujitsu, free time, but things like conversation and reading and even just exploring nature. I was just thinking. everybody loves to watch YouTube videos of people that really genuinely explore nature, because they don't ever do that. And even if you do, you will often find yourself with a sort of trail, right? This is a hiking trail. There's maps. I know the territory, and I know that I'm going to be safe on the territory, at least to some degree or another. And the thing that was coming up for me is that if we really want to be in these third spaces, because I think a lot of things have gotten sort of shifted into some sort of performative third space where it's not genuinely the environment that can elicit this intimacy. And if we want to move towards that, I think we have to move towards exploration. So like things outside of our comfort zone and all of these things. It's so funny because the friend thing that I said about like a psychologist is a friend, I think that's very reductive, obviously, but like you're stepping into a need that people have for friends. And a lot of things can maybe be cleared out by just having friends. And then once you get past that stuff, you can get to like maybe the deeper stuff that training is required for. But like, what about cooking?
Yeah.
Cooking is an adventure.
Yes.
That's a skill. That's like that provides so much meaning and joy and all of these things, and nobody cooks anymore. So it's like there's so much of regular, normal stuff that if we could let's just do a little bit more of that and a little bit less worrying about everything else. I don't know if that solves everything, but
I agree. I really want to say something on that friend thing, just because it's been sitting on my mind. Yes. So again, it's going to depend on the type of therapy, and kind of the more psychodynamic or more psychoanalytic you get, probably the more you get away from the idea that what you're doing is really kind of like a friend. I know what it means, and there is something to it. And I think what it's probably referring to is the deep attunement, right? Like just the deep attunement that the therapist takes, and that an ideal friend would do the same for you. But there is, there is. The work that I do does genuinely involve a real relationship with every person I meet. And that's what I mean about, like, I have been thinking for a while about how it's even possible that I can do that. Like, it just really doesn't feel like that. This goes back to the energy side of things. It really doesn't feel like something, it just feels like something that's given to me in order to be able to do that. As opposed to, because there's a real relationship. There is an element of me genuinely meeting this person and showing something of my personhood to them that is required I believe, that is required for this to be as powerful as it could be. And that's what I'm in the service of. I'm not really, I'm not, and people are different, but I'm not a psychologist that's interested in kind of just doing like a flattened version of the work. I to the best of my ability, I want to be able to sort of go in and work as deeply as a person wants to. But it requires a lot, and it does require part of me really showing up as a human. So there is that component, and there is deep attunement, and I am there just completely paying attention to this person as much as possible, trying not to think about anything else that's going on anywhere in my life or who I'm seeing next or anything. That bit is important. But there's also sometimes, what am I trying to say? There's also like confrontation that's involved here. And what I mean by that is that, oftentimes the client really doesn't like me. And I guess you could say that could be like a good friend, but there really is, like, when we're really going into the places that this person wants to explore, there's going to be lots and lots of resistance from the part of them that says we don't do that, we don't go near that, we won't look at that, So I can often be eliciting a lot of feelings of people not liking me. I'm often the receiver of that in the therapy room, and that is part of the work. So there's also an ability to be with and hold a whole lot of feelings. You don't often feel like a friend, is what I'm trying to say. Like,
yeah.
you know why you're doing what you're doing, and you are checking with the client on some level that it's still okay. But there is, it can be, you have to say and ask off tough things sometimes. You have to point out things to a person that can feel quite uncomfortable, that most people in their life would never point out to them.
Yeah.
There is a real assertiveness to that role too. So it's a bit of both. There is like kind of the more passive being open as a friend, but there is a real contending with who are you in there, and what is this shield that's going up now? And they won't like you back for that, and that's okay. You just work with it. I don't know. That seemed important to bring up. But yes, cooking. I think that's where you were before I went on this. I
No,
went on this little side trail. Yeah, cooking coming up. You know what it is though? It's like it's cooking. It's going outdoors. It's just being with people in a place that's not like the usual, where you're going to come up against challenges and anxieties that you didn't expect. How does everyone deal with that? What feelings come up? This is an opportunity we can be intimate about that together and share them together and work on them together and learn what we're capable of in new ways together.
yeah.
I think nature's nice because it brings in the beauty. Like it kind of, there's something about the context itself, and versus, yeah, just like a room with white walls, and it's a bit different, doesn't? Yeah, the context is a bit different.
Yeah, artificial. Thank you for your time. I
You're very well.
feel awkward even cutting this off right now, but I'm we could keep talking about this forever. And I think that it's wonderful that you do what you do, and I'm glad that you spent enough time underwater to figure out that this was something that you were going to be good at. And yeah, so where can people see what it is that you're doing on the internet and connect with you?
I have a very tiny YouTube channel called Aspasia Psyche, or at Aspasia Psychology. You probably can't spell either of those words. Definitely not my name, but it will be it'll be in the show notes. Otherwise, I provide therapy in Sydney, Australia, or online. You can find all that if you go to my YouTube channel. I don't like to promote myself too much. It makes me feel awkward and uncomfortable. I have rising feelings underneath. But this has been a delight. It's been so lovely to finally speak with you, Ian. Thank you so much for asking and for setting it up. I'm really humbled.
My
by
pleasure. You're worth promoting, so I'm glad to do so here. Thanks.